And with that, that will conclude kind of our regular meeting activities. We go now to a special program, and here to conduct the program, our past president and somebody that we all enjoy. John, thank you for getting back up in front of the group. I appreciate it, and I know they do too. Good to see you.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to welcome all of you this morning, and it's interesting, it slipped out, but there are, I presume everybody here today knows why we're here today. In fact, there may be a couple of Rotarians, part of Sunrise Rotary. At least my experience as a past president of this August club, there were oftentimes occasions when people showed up not knowing exactly why they were there, nor what was going on that particular day. This is the day for John Franklin. This is John Franklin's day. And I want to tell you that Gene was very adept all this while at keeping it from John until they drove into the parking lot this morning. And she had to kind of spill the beans, if you will. So John, as most frogs do, when the weather turns dramatic, when it gets either cold or very hot, you know about the story about the frog, how to boil a frog, how you turn up the water very, very slowly. And in fact, we're going to turn up the water on John today, as a matter of fact. And we have some very special guests and some very special friends of John's. And we want to say thanks be to God that they have rearranged their schedules so that they could be with us this day. And we're going to hear a little bit of song. We're going to hear some words of affirmation and praise. But this is an opportunity for us to turn it back on the man who has turned out all of us in extraordinary ways. In 1992, the Westport Playhouse produced a play called The Fourth Wall by A.R. Gurney. I'm not sure if any of you actually saw that play. John, I suspect you did, correct? The Fourth Wall. And The Fourth Wall is the story of a couple, and in fact the bride in the story realizes that her husband has created a scenario in which everything in their house is oriented to going on stage. Everything, it is if their house were a playhouse. And so she brings in, so a very wise theater critic comes in and indicates that in fact this fourth wall, where everyone who enters the room begins to act as if they were in a play or even a musical, when occasionally someone begins to sing a Cole Porter song. And I can't imagine any one of us that is who's lived his life more like the fourth wall than John Franklin, where he has turned his life and our lives, quite honestly, not as if it were theater, but has encouraged and invited all of us to step up and be accounted in a very, very special way. So John, for that and so many other things, we are truly grateful this day, and we would like to bring up various persons who are going to share with you some of their deep appreciation and their great thanks. And in other words, this is our way of a standing ovation, John Franklin, for you and all that you have been and meant to all of us. And I want to begin this day by bringing up a couple of showbiz folks. In particular, Valerie Austin, if she would come up. And though I wouldn't have originally admitted that he is showbiz, if Bob Galan would also come up here as well. And I think they've got a little troupe, as a matter of fact, that they want to put together and offer a few things.
Will the rest of our little group come up here, please? Eileen and John and...
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right, come around. Ready? There's no Franklin like John Franklin. He's like no one we know. He put together 3 forbidden Westports, keeping all of us up on our toes.
Focusing our energy on charity. Where would we be without him? Heaven knows.
We're all thanking our John Franklin, a great friend without peer. Everyone who's anyone the Southern alums, Rotary chums,
Northwestern alums,
Humanistic Judaism congregation, it's a celebration, it's true. We're all together for you.
We'd like to invite John Vaccaro, if he would come up, and on behalf of the Westport Arts Center, again, what we're about to do is to give you a storyline of some of the aspects of John Franklin Frogg's life. A little bit in Westport, a little bit in Michigan, a little bit here, a little bit there, and we won't go into all of the the tigers, and we won't go into all that kind of stuff. But we've got some people who know a few things about John. John Vaccaro.
Thanks, John. Okay, I don't do this, but I'm trying to be on a schedule. And while I'm representing the Arts Center, I just want to tell you that there are 2 other people who really more strongly represent the Arts Center, and that's Joyce Thompson and Cindy Vaccaro, both of whom former presidents of the Center. And they're my guests here, and they asked to come to honor you, John, okay, along with all the rest of us. Okay, John, you're the Renaissance man. Triple threat, creative type. You're writer, lyricist, and actor, singer. Not too many people know that. You have one of the most lyrical tenor voices I've ever heard. And you are a scholar of the Broadway musical. Not a show tune you don't know. He uses talents pro bono, I think that's his middle name, pro bono, to create a number of Broadway musical retrospectives at the Arts Center. Extravaganzas with true Broadway talent. When you do Forbidden Westport here, you use local talent. You didn't do that at the Arts Center. And you got those you networked with the true legends. And I remember Sheldon Harnick. You did an evening with Sheldon Harnick. And he helped you work on the show. And I think he came. And I believe that was the night that I heard you sing. In fact, I think it was the only night I've ever heard you sing. But it was such a special moment that I still remember. That was a long time ago. You raised a lot of money for the Arts Center. And it was you that really kept them going for those years. And that was before you were tapped as the president in I think it was 1996. The Arts Center at that point had a long-term lease at East Farm School. The town was asking for the school back. We had a burgeoning educational need in the elementary area. You found yourself in the middle of one of the most historically divisive dramas in Westport, staged ironically between 2 normally compatible cultures, arts and education. How often have we heard those 2 words together? During that time, which must have been staggeringly painful for him, John became a lightning rod, where many of his friends turned on him publicly in the press, in stores around town, on the telephone at his home. He absorbed these blows and used his creativity, his passion for our town, his love of artists and education to perform one of the truly magnificent jobs of negotiating in our town's history. By the end of 1997, he'd found a way to restore the property to the town for our children's education, and also got $625,000 for the Arts Center. And And this check allowed the Art Center to find a new and better home. He did experience a little moment of triumph at the annual holiday party when he walked in waving the check. John took the brunt of the criticism from those impassioned true believers on both sides of the debate in our community who were not encumbered by any facts. The truth is that John acted selflessly, honestly, and with his eye on the right solution, not a popular solution. The usual rule about the definition of a successful negotiation is that neither side believes they won. This settlement was worthy of a Harvard case study, as it was a win-win situation for everyone. John Franklin deserves all the credit for this job, extremely well done. And I'm very grateful that Sunrise Rotary has given me the chance to finally and very publicly give John all the credit that he deserves.
Thank you, John. David Rogers is with us this day, and we're going to invite David to come up and speak to us in regards to the Theater Arts Workshop. David?
Thank you. John was at the very first meeting of the Theater Arts Workshop. That was 28 years ago. And he was an active member at that time. He brought us, at that time he was producing a series of reviews, and he brought those in and showed them to us. And then, with his chronic love of musical comedy, he brought in a musical version of Dick Whittington, which he has been working on for the last 96 years, I think. He made us all perform it. Somehow, memory sometimes fades as one matures, but I seem to remember that he made me imitate Hermione Gingold. Later, he ran a radio group that kind of involved commercials and performing for commercials. And in this group, he made me imitate Humphrey Bogart. And of course, I'm not a mimic in the first place, but there is something about John, when he gets you in a room, you do what he wants, whether you have thought about it, or wanted to, or didn't want to, or have no idea what it's all about. I have performed for him in several of the shows that he's put on, the Forbidden Westports and others. And John has a marvelous technique of giving me the wrong song. And therefore, I had to go into corners and find a way to do the song. And I used to be furious, thinking, why is he giving me all this kind of problem? And then I discovered that perhaps it was because he forced me into doing something that was really quite funny that I didn't expect to do in the first place. I did get revenge. At the Theater Arts Workshop, we did an evening of Richard Rodgers music, and I made John sing the wrong song. And that was kind of a marvelous evening. I'm told I'm doing 2 minutes here, and I didn't time myself, but John has been through the years a wonderful friend to the Theater Artists Workshop, and to me and to my wife and my daughter, whom he insisted go to Northwestern. We hadn't thought of it, but of course John said go to Northwestern, so she went. And, it was a very happy choice for her. So I too would like to thank John for all these years of friendship and support, and forcing me to do the wrong song. Thank you, John.
Again, we have a series of persons representing various organizations both within the town and beyond. So let's invite Mary Vickery, if she would step up, representing the Westport Women's Club. Since John has had a significant role in the life of that organization, that wonderful organization here in town. Mary? And you've got some friends, I see. All right.
Thank you.
Now, can we ask, are they going to
Sing and dance?
sing and dance? Oh, no? Oh, dear. That's too bad.
Good morning, and thank you for letting us come and be part of this great event. For those of you who may not know, and I hope there really aren't any of you out there that don't, but the Westport Women's Club is a local nonprofit organization founded in 1907 and devoted to volunteerism and raising funds to improve and support the cultural, educational, health, and well-being of our town and the surrounding community. So with that said, on behalf of our membership of over 300 local women, we're really very happy to be here this morning, and I am accompanied by two past presidents of the club, well known to all of you, I think, Joe Fuchs-Luscombe and Barbara Levy. And we are here to honor a long-time friend of the club. John Franklin has been a true godsend for us in trying to meet our mission in raising money. Both Barbara and Joe have had the good fortune to work personally with John on a couple of club fundraisers that John pretty much single-handedly produced for us. Some of you may have attended and remember that wonderful Gershwin tribute featuring Orrin Grossman that we did, and then there was the 70s show, a retro show of music from the 70s. And both of these fundraisers were sellout performances for us and phenomenally well received. And John never took a dime for his work, which included writing, staging, directing, casting, and producing the shows. We feel so fortunate to have had his help and support throughout the years, and his dedication and generosity are truly amazing. So it's with great pleasure that we would like to present John with a special certificate and a small gift from the club. And Barbara is going to read the certificate. Actually, it's in the bag. So here's the certificate. And you probably want to try to wrestle that other.
The Westport Women's Club is proud to recognize John Franklin and his alter ego, Frog Wilson, for his exceptional creativity, generosity, vision, wit, and charm, volunteering his time, talents, and energy to write, stage, cast, and produce original musical fundraisers over the years for several local nonprofit organizations, including our own. John has clearly demonstrated the value of partnerships and his love of Westport. The Westport Women's Club salutes John and thanks him for selflessly sharing his many gifts to help the Westport Women's Club meet its fundraising mission and for significantly contributing to the rich artistic fabric of our community.
And John, we also have a little gift for you. It includes two books. The first is a history of our club, A Rare Woman's Club by Eileen and Peter Petropoulos. And we also gave you a copy of our club Sweets and Treats, Baking in Westport, which is recipes from our Yankee Doodle Fair bake sale. And we also have given you a Westport Women's Club mug to enjoy your coffee with.
In addition to all of the good things that John has done for the Women's Club, I was also privy to all he did at the Arts Center. I happened to have been on the board of the Arts Center when I was tapped to head up the school building committee. Well, I resigned from the board of the Arts Center because it occurred to me that there might be a conflict. And there was a conflict. But thank goodness for John, he came through and he helped the school building committee be as successful as it was. Today we have the wonderful schools that we have, and we continue to enjoy the good fortune of being one of the top schools, of being one of the top educational systems in the country. So thank you, Elliot Landon, for that. And thank you, John Franklin, for making it possible for us to take care of the school children in Westport and at the same time take care of the seniors. And now that I'm a senior myself, I'm very happy for that.
So thank you again on behalf of the Westport Women's Club for being a loyal friend and supporter to us all.
Thank you.
We're now going to invite the Reverend Dr. Pete Powell, if he would step up, representing Homes with Hope, since there is yet another facet of Frog's life, so important to all of us here in Westport. Pete?
Before I say too much, I should remind you that I am retired, so that anything I say does not reflect negatively on Homes with Hope. And when I'm done, in case I forget, Audrey's going to get up and has something to give John. And I say that because of my opening paragraph. At the risk of alienating some of you, but apropos of one of the ways I know John, when I was still with Homes with Hope, I was frequently asked why there was a shelter in Westport and not, for instance, in Darien. I always responded, and caught some flack because of it, by pointing out that while there were several churches in Darien, including 2 Episcopal churches, there were no synagogues in Darien. I was never able to say whether or not it was because Westport was open to synagogues, or because so many people in Westport are Jewish, that we not only have but handsomely support the work with the homeless, and I think that the presence of the synagogues and the Jews in Westport is crucial to that. John takes being Jewish very seriously, and I know that this has been foundational in his commitment to social justice. Fortunately, many members of the Jewish community in Westport take Judaism seriously, and this has been crucial to the existence and acceptance of a program that feeds, houses, and shelters the most vulnerable members of our community. Many, many years ago, John hired me to do several adult ed classes for the Congregation for Humanistic Judaism. I recall especially a course I taught on the Qumran community, the Dead Sea Scrolls. John has always impressed me with his inquiring and far-reaching mind. I joined the board of what was then the Interfaith Housing Association in 1985, nearly 3 years before I became its executive director. John was on the board, and he was a restless presence on the board. Now, to give you an idea of how small it was, we met in one of the classrooms, where'd they go? At the United Methodist Church. The seats were too small. They were meant for kids, not for adults. Austin Doolittle was the president. John Boyd was the treasurer, and he would bring all of the financial documents in a shoebox, which at every meeting he promised to go through soon. He would just assure us we had enough money to keep going for another month. I remember that even in 1985, John had grand plans about the future of the Interfaith Housing Association. He would talk about our sponsoring the Apple Festival, which was constantly in danger of closing and ultimately did, or putting on a production that he would write and produce for us. He terrified the board. They demurred. At that time, without any full-time staff, I think that it seemed to them that it was enough simply to exist. The shelter was at the Vigilant Firehouse and soon merged with the community kitchen and took over Operation Bootstraps. Staying open was a struggle, and in 1986, our first full-time executive director was hired. She was scared of the clients and lasted 1 year. John was still on the board when I was hired. We remind each other of this periodically. Of the people who are on the board, John, Dolores Backrack, and Austin Doolittle are the only ones I see regularly anymore. As John may remember, soon after I was hired, I took the board away on a one-day retreat to Wainwright House in Rye. I think it was the first time the board had gone away to plan. One of the women on that trip, who's since moved up to the Cape, remarked on the fact that one of the psychiatrists, Alden Whitney, at Norwalk Hospital was how she thought God looked. And I said, "You mean to say that God is a gay Episcopal priest?" And she hadn't been aware of that. He's passed on along too, but he was way out of the closet. John inspired us in part by putting the work of his small group to music, to think big. We did. And Homes with Hope today is a program you support generously, most recently through the recent revival of Forbidden Westport. John got the message of what supportive housing is and shelter early. He put on, as most especially for us, the second edition of Forbidden Westport, which was crucial to the existence of the Westport Rotary House. You raised $25,000 at that event, matching the contribution of the Luncheon Club. I was able to leverage his contribution into state, federal, and additional private support to be something more than $2 million to build the house most of you have seen, and will be the Westport Rotary House in perpetuity. So our clubs are represented right there on the train tracks. As you take the train out towards New York and you're sitting on the north side, you can see it. It's the best looking house on that block. And one of the ways we were able to do that and get the financing is we could say if the Rotary clubs are supporting it, we have community support. And HUD and CHAFA and other funding bodies and some generous individuals said that was good enough for them, and it exists. John has, for the 26 years I have known him, unfailingly dreamed big. I am forever grateful to him for doing this and enabling me to be a beneficiary of his prodigious talents. Thank you, John.
Audrey?
Thank you. So, we came up with a little plaque of our own for John, and I will read it to you. This is the President's Award, given to John Franklin for his years of service to the community, most notably Homes with Hope, formerly known as Interfaith Housing, presented this day, May 20th, 2011. Pete's quote, "John requires those of us around him to think bigger." And I think those are very sage and true words about John. And he has done a tremendous amount he's always been a tremendous supporter of Homes with Hope and Interfaith Housing, but at the risk of seeming like John Boehner, I just wanted to say that John has been always a tremendous supporter of me, and for that I really appreciate it. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Audrey. Thank you, Pete. Jane Ross, if you would step forward, representing Smart Kids with Learning Disabilities. As Jane comes forward, again, all of us are beginning to understand some of the dimensions of John Franklin's nurture and sustenance in all of our lives and the life of Westport in particular. Jane Ross.
Thank you, John. Like this one. I'm so pleased to have the chance to be here today to thank John for another aspect of the work he's done and the help he has provided, both within Westport and well beyond our borders. This is a cause to which John has been passionately committed over the years, among the many others, and that is the subject of learning disabilities. This is a cause with which I became involved, as many of you know, through my efforts to help my son, who's very dyslexic, struggled in school, couldn't really manage third grade arithmetic. We finally discovered at the end of his fourth grade year that he did not know how to read. Nor could he tell his right hand from his left or tell you with confidence the order of days of the week or months of the year. From the moment I joined the Sunrise Rotary Club, soon after opening our doors at our nonprofit organization, Smart Kids with Learning Disabilities, I found we had a champion in John, someone who had raised two sons with learning disabilities, who understood a great deal about the subject and believed deeply in our work empowering parents, and embraced and helped support that work in a variety of ways over these years with Jane's enthusiastic assistance. When you're doing something John cares about, he's with you all the way, 100% without reserve. It's a wonderful and rare quality. It's meant a great deal to me personally and to our work at Smart Kids, and I'm very happy to take this occasion to tell him briefly, thank you.
Thank you.
We've already had a brief introduction through Pete about the Congregation for Humanistic Judaism, but we'd like to invite Saul Hafner if he would step up and share with us in regards to that wonderful community and John Franklin. Saul?
Thank you. As was mentioned, I'm Saul Hafner, and I was professor of management and marketing at Sacred Heart University. Many people thought that I had a religious background to teach at Sacred Heart. It turned out that the church fathers who ran the organization believed that the Jewish people knew more about business, and so we populated the management and marketing department. How many of you know what humanistic Judaism is? I was going to give my short talk, 3,000 years of Jewish history in 3 minutes, but I'll pass that by. Humanistic Judaism, despite what some people think, is not made up of members of showbiz, nor do we worship Irving Berlin. This form of Judaism, which emphasizes personal responsibility and personal action, was originally founded in Birmingham, Michigan, a suburb of Detroit. John and Jean were members of that organization. It was founded by a legitimate ordained rabbi by the name of Sherwin Wine, and it prospered in that area. In 1965, John and Jean moved here to Westport with a promise from Sherwin that if they could not find a congregation in this area that met their needs, he would come and help out. And so in 1967, Sherwin came here. And John, in anticipation of Rabbi Wine's arrival, wrote an article for the newspapers entitled, "Everything You Want to Know About the Atheist Rabbi." And that pulled a huge crowd. And from that group, the founders of the Congregation of Humanistic Judaism, which at the time was the only congregation outside of Birmingham. Today there are congregations in this area, in Westchester, in New York City, in New Jersey, and in Massachusetts. We also have congregations all over the world. So it has really grown, and its roots go very deep into this community. That was some 45 or so years ago, and John not only served as president of our own congregation, he was president of the national organization as well. A few years ago, he made what seemed like a simple suggestion, which actually saved our congregation a great deal of difficulty. We, from the beginning, have never had paid staff. All the jobs, adult education, Sunday school, programming, membership, were performed by members of the congregation in their spare or free time. It became, for many of us, too much to accept the responsibility to do one of these jobs for a whole year. And John came up with this very simple suggestion, which became known as the trimester approach. Essentially, we divided the year into 3 parts, and you only had to volunteer for 1/3 of the job of the year. It saved the congregation's life. But John, with all his contributions, is still very active in the congregation. On June 3rd, a Friday night which is coming up, John is going to lead a discussion on the music of social justice. I just want to read a little bit from the program. It says, racism, sexism, anti-Semitism, America in the 20th century as reflected in the lyrics of our time. It is presented by co-founder John Franklin, and John will talk about some of the collaborations he's experienced with Jewish lyricist Sheldon Harnick of Fiddler on the Roof and others. Thanks to John, he will share his John will share his reminiscences of a dinner with Yip Harburg of Finian's Rainbow fame, a master of social justice and a real humanist. So, on behalf of the congregation, we're grateful for your service, and I wish that I had prepared a certificate that I could give you as an award.
Thank you, sir. I'm amazed that so far through the course of this program, though it was just briefly noted, not too much has come up about Northwestern University to this point. That will now change. We would like to invite Susan Sachs and Sanford Sachs if they would step forward, or Sanford, if you are here, in particular to talk about Frog's connection to Northwestern, which we're delighted that you have worn your particular jacket this day, so we have some little bit of understanding of what Frog has been trying to inculcate in all of us here in Westport for many years. Sanford, if you would step forward, please.
Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure for me to be here. My wife Sue and I have been friends with John and Jean for over 50 years, which is sort of hard to believe, but that's the number, 50 years. And she sends her love and respect for John today. She's been teaching at Barnard for about 40 years, and she had a commitment at the college. Now, John, one thing that I felt when hearing all these descriptions of all the work that you've done for the community of Westport, how did you ever find time to do all the work you've done for Northwestern? Many of these things I never realized, and thank you very much for all the time that you gave to Northwestern. But my friendship with John goes back to the 1950s, when we were students together at Northwestern in Evanston, Illinois. I graduated in 1956, and John in 1959. And he never fails to point out that he's 3 years younger than I am. John was in the School of Speech, now Communications, a school where many Broadway stars have attended for many, many years. Since my wife and I, Sue, moved to New York City in 1966, we have been close friends of John and Jean for, again, over 45 years. Since graduation, John has been dedicated to Northwestern, volunteering in many varied activities, with emphasis on theater, athletics, he's a strong Northwestern fan, and general leadership activities. Over 50 years involvement. Hard to believe, but that's the number. I'd like to highlight a few activities, in fact, several activities. First, in the 1980s, John was president of the Greater New York, Connecticut, and New Jersey Area Alumni Club for Northwestern. Over 15,000 alums live in this area, and they have a very, very active program with about 7 or 8 program speakers and other visitors from Northwestern oftentimes. One of his key interests with the club during that time, and this interest should not surprise anyone here who attended Forbidden Westport just about a month ago, the most recent show, which was on April 30th. John produced, directed, and wrote the annual Northwestern Holiday Party Show for the Northwestern Alumni Club. And this show is always held in about December or so of each year. And he did this for over 300 alums and friends. And he did this for over 15 years. And this is a thread in the 1970s and 80s. And a common thread that exists in John's activities, it's all volunteer. He does it for the love of the organization and for the camaraderie of the people he works with. And some of these names have been mentioned before, but when John asks you to help out, you stand up and help out. And many of the illustrious stars that were in that show, and I could have a list of 50 Broadway stars, and most of these names you'd remember. But Sheldon Arnick, who wrote the lyricist for Fiddler on the Roof, Jerry Orbach, the original cast of Fantastics and on TV for many, many years, Tony Roberts, Nancy Dessau, Ron Holgate, Richard Kind, Michael McCormick, who lives in the area, Larry Grossman, and again, the list could go on and on. But all these people volunteered their time to put together a show, which was really a pretty complex show, over an hour, hour and a quarter in length. And they did it, I think, for the love of Northwestern and the respect that they had for John. In 1991, over 20 years ago, he was one of a handful of alums who founded an organization, NUEA, Northwestern University Entertainment Alliance. And this is a support group which supports the many, many students graduating, young students usually, who come to New York and try to make their way in Broadway. And this group now has been very, very active, exists 20 years, and has an active alumni base that again has been a very, very supportive group for young alums coming to Broadway. Not surprising with all this work, John received the Northwestern University Alumni Service Award in 1989. This is an award that's given to about 6 alums a year for long and extraordinary service to Northwestern. And it's really a special achievement, again, about 6 a year given, when you consider that Northwestern has over 170,000 alumni. And they give out just 6 of these a year. All of these activities, and the activities mentioned earlier, have a common thread. They're all volunteer efforts on John's part. He does it for the love of the organization, his commitment to the organization, and the camaraderie that he feels with working with the people on the different committees. He chooses the area that he wants to help out with, and in most cases takes on a leadership role within that group. John, thanks for all you do for Northwestern, and you are a wonderful friend.
Arlo Wilson, if you would step forward, sir, representing the Westport Sunrise.
John?
Okay.
Thank you, John, and thank you, John. Rotarians, you know much of what John Franklin has done in our club historically. And you know that you are the president of this club for 1 year. But those who are leaders continue to lead regardless of whether they have a title. And John Franklin has been a leader in this club. Every year he has been a member of the club. He has been at the center of every strategic planning effort, of every club visioning process. I believe more than any individual in the club, he has set the tone year on year and done more to bring us together and to get us on the same page and moving in a common direction than anyone else. And for that, we are all grateful. John has also been at the center of 2 of the greatest legacies that this club has brought to our community. The first of those being the establishment of the Young Voices Endowment with the Fairfield Community Foundation. And that is a sum of money that has now grown to over $120,000, and which we are able to put to work on behalf of student programs throughout this area. And there have been some wonderful programs that have been spun off as a direct result of that. And we've heard many times of John's creation of Forbidden Westport and the programs in the community that Forbidden Westport has benefited over the years. John has been previously the recipient of a Paul Harris Award given to him by the club. This is the highest honor that Rotary bestows And today we will give to him a second Paul Harris Award. John, if you would please step forward. Thank you, John. Welcome. I ask you to turn and face your many admirers. John, this is the pin that is your second Paul Harris Award. This one has in it, to identify the fact that it is the second, a blue sapphire. Thank you very much for your service. And I also have for you a special commemorative edition of the Paul Harris Award in honor of Frog Wilson. Frog, thank you.